Welcome into the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. I'm your host, Jake McDonnell. You can find me out on Twitter at jmcdonnell95 and on Facebook as well. Here today, about 3 weeks in the Major League Baseball season, and here to talk all things Orioles as they sit now with one of the best records in Major League Baseball. Looking at the standings here, sitting at the top of the American League East at 12-5. One of the best records in baseball, and of course, joining me to talk all things Orioles is Nolan McGraw. You can find him out on Twitter at Nolan_MCG. You can find Charm City Birdwatch at CharmCityBirdwatch.com and on Facebook at Charm City Birdwatch and on Twitter at CharmCityBW. So we're going to talk today. The Orioles, of course, they had their series with the Red Sox this weekend, a 3-game series with the Orioles taking 2 out of 3. But the story is surrounding Manny Machado. We've seen, Machado getting some scuffles in the past. Last year getting in the fist fight for Yordano Ventura. He had the issue with Josh Donaldson a few years ago, throwing the bat down his way. But this weekend, when the Orioles played the Red Sox on Friday, picking up the win 2-0, I believe it was. Machado was stealing a base and kind of slid kind of late. Or no, he wasn't stealing a base. It was a Trumbo. Trumbo hit the ball, and he was getting to second base from first. And he slid kind of late and ended up spiking Dustin Pedroia, Red Sox infielder, in the ankle-foot area. He comes out of the game, and he did not suit up to play. Pedroia did not suit up to play Saturday or Sunday. And then today, 8th inning, Machado's up at bat, and Red Sox pitcher Matt Barnes throws behind his head, clearly aiming for his head. Machado's actually lucky he got out of the way when he did, because the ball literally went just past his helmet. Everybody at first thought that it was going to be a hit by pitch, but it turns out the ball actually hit his bat, so it ended up turning out to be a foul ball. Barnes got ejected, and then Joe Kelly came in to warm up, and he pitched to Machado with the next pitch, and he hit an RBI double to bring Adam Jones home. Orioles players talking after the game, a lot of them, they said Orioles players thought it was intentional. They were just saying the cliche stuff like throwing at a guy's head is wrong. And then on the Red Sox side of things, you had Pedroia saying that's not the right way to do it. And actually, after the whole sequence happened, Pedroia was shown in the dugout saying to Manny, that wasn't me. I would have taken care of it on Friday if it had been me. So I don't think Pedroia knew that they were going to retaliate in the way. I think Pedroia might have known they were going to retaliate. I don't think that he knew that they were planning to throw at his head. I genuinely believe him. He doesn't seem like the type of guy that would do that. So that happens, and then Machado, obviously after the game, a lot of people were actually surprised he reacted the way they did, because in the past he's been known to be kind of a hothead. See the Ventura fight from last year, but today just didn't really do anything. Was just remain calm. If it hit his head, he probably would have reacted a little bit differently, but just kind of went down to first base, was staring at the Red Sox dugout a little bit, but clearly, from my perspective, I don't know if what he did on Friday when he slid late. From watching the clip, this is not me being, bipartisan to the Orioles. It generally looked like, yes, he did get a late slide, but even before he got to the bag, he was trying to stop himself. He knew he was going to crash into Pedroia, and, even as soon as he made contact with Pedroia, he, realized what the situation was and tried to help him get up, and of course, Pedroia ended up having to come out of the game. So I honestly don't genuinely think Machado meant to spike him the way he did. It doesn't mistake the fact that it was a late slide. It goes against the rules that Major League Baseball has in place right now. But I don't believe that Machado had ill will in his heart. Clearly, the Red Sox, though, and Matt Barnes clearly had ill will in their heart, aiming for his head. So, Nolan, I want to ask you after just kind of get your assessment on this, because I know some people are leaning towards, what Machado did was intentional. Some people are saying it wasn't. It depends who you ask, but it was clear today what the Red Sox did. They were trying to get after Machado, hit him in the head.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with what you just said about Machado's slide. It was definitely late, definitely against the rules. There's no denying that. But like you said, you can see as soon as his foot made contact with Pedroia's leg, he was easing up and his arms were already extended to catch Pedroia. That whole sequence was just very awkward and kind of hard to watch, but you just hate to see what happened today be the result of that.
Yeah, and it's certainly going to be interesting as next week the Orioles are going to be playing a 3-game series at Fenway Park. Did look to see that Pedroia was going to be getting an MRI on his ankle and foot area, so we certainly hope that he's not going to have to go on the disabled list as a result of this. But certainly, if the Orioles going up to Fenway in a week's time, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. A lot of the announcers and media members are saying this is something that could go on all season. We know Machado in the past has been targeted in these instances, some that he's brought on to himself. But I agree with what you were saying. I don't think that I don't think what he did on Friday was done on purpose. But if it had been me, I'm not somebody who advocates for throwing at hitters and to retaliate. Being a baseball player myself knows what it feels like to get hit by a fastball, and it's not anything fun. I wouldn't wish that on anybody have to go through that, especially in a circumstance like this. But if they were going to throw at him, I don't see why they just couldn't throw at his leg or whatever. And we saw that Rodriguez earlier in the game was going inside a little bit, but they didn't have to throw at his head. I think that was taking it a little too far. And in my opinion, I think Matt Barnes should get a suspension for doing it. And the Red Sox, whether it's a team, whether it's Barnes, there should be some sort of fine involved because there's honestly no place for throwing at people's heads, no matter what the situation is.
Yeah, definitely. I got to agree with everything you said there. And to go back on what you mentioned earlier about being a little surprised about Manny's reaction, because I was certainly surprised, and I kind of expected him to get hit in yesterday's game, but nothing happened. And I think that if that was their intention, which it was, to hit him, it should have been done yesterday. They didn't do it yesterday, and I don't know why. They waited until today. So
yeah, they waited until his last possible at bat to I guess to make sure nothing else happened. They wanted to be the final ones to do it, and even they were up sitting with a 6-0 lead at the time, so I don't think they really cared at that point. But it is surprising nothing was done. But today it made sense when it happened in the 8th inning with a 6-0 lead that they did it when they did, which is kind of a chicken move at that point, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I just noticed watching the replay. Not sure if this is a big factor or not, but you can see on the pitch that the catcher is set up outside, not even set up inside, and that just doesn't play into the whole excuse that the pitch got away from him, because there was clearly intent.
So meanwhile, that'll be something to definitely keep on the lookout for as the Orioles go up to Fenway next week. I want to talk about a little bit the starting pitching for the Orioles. Dylan Bundy is, the clear-cut number one starter right now with Tillman on the DL. He's been absolutely amazing. Wade Miley and Ubaldo Jimenez. Jimenez has been up and down, but had a really nice start against the Reds the other night. I think it was 7 shutout innings, I believe, and Miley went 8 innings the other night. We saw Jason Aquino make his Major League debut the other night. He went 6 innings, and we've seen Alec Asher make a start as well. But the one concern for the Orioles has been Kevin Gausman, who did start opening day. Of course, gave up he only went like 3.1 innings in his one start. I want to say it was against the Reds earlier in the week. He, starts again on Sunday, goes 5.1 innings and allows 5 earned runs in that amount of time on 8 hits, 3 walks, and 4 strikeouts. His ERA is getting up there right now at 7.50. Certainly, the Orioles were expecting a lot more out of him. We've seen more bad than good from Gausman, from who was supposed to be the opening day starter, but certainly hasn't pitched like it. And I've seen a number of people on Twitter, including Jason Lockenfora, who's a big Orioles fan, who I've had on the podcast. He said the Orioles drafted Kevin Gausman number 4 overall, and so far in his career, he's got more losses than wins, and his ERA is above 4. So, I love Kevin Gausman. I think he's a great guy, but he's been in the organization now with the big league club since mid 2013, and really, except for 2014 when he had a great stretch that went into the postseason, hasn't really been all that impressive for a number 4 overall pick. And really, when you want the guy to be your opening day starter, number 1 guy, I expect more out of Kevin, and I'm kind of disappointed with what I've seen so far this season.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. I still think he can be a number 1 guy, not only this season, but in the future as well. It's definitely a slow start. Definitely don't want to see that, but he still can be that guy that we've seen in the past. And you talked about the more losses than wins. I believe it was last year he went months without getting a win before getting his first win. and there were so many games during that time period where he just didn't get any run support. So wins and losses is not as accurate of a stat when you're looking at that kind of stuff. But other than that, I agree with what you were saying.
And, and as, Gausman, I believe, will, get better as the season goes on. I certainly hope he does, for his sake too. But on the other side, you've got Dylan Bundy pitching extremely well at ERA of 1.37. He's made 4 starts now. He's been absolutely electric with his stuff. Wade Miley, as much as people have to pick on him for his lack of, success in the big leagues, he has certainly put together a nice month of April so far. And, Ubaldo Jimenez is going to have his ups and downs. He's going to have probably two bad starts, a mediocre start, and a great start for every 4 starts he has. But I believe it, over the past number of days, especially in the Red series and what happened the other night against the Red Sox, the Orioles, they're only scoring two runs or whatever, 4 runs, not much offensive production, but with the success of the starting pitching, it's certainly been manageable, except from what we saw today when Gausman gives up 5 runs in 5 innings or whatever, and the Orioles are down. It's 6-0 in the 8th inning, then it's probably too little too late there. But from what we've seen so far from the starting pitching, I don't think a lot of people expected this with Tillman being on the DL. Certainly Jason Aquino and Alec Asher being the 5th guy, kind of rotating around. I think Asher might be more of a bullpen role, and we could see more of Aquino in that starting role, based on what we've seen. It'd be nice to have another lefty in there. But I've been pleasantly surprised with starting pitching, and we can only hope that Chris Tillman continues his recovery down in Florida and, down with Bowie and, eventually with Norfolk down. Be nice to see him. And as much as we've been concerned about his shoulder, all signs point to him making an early May return. Hopefully he can be somewhat close to what he was, prior to last season, when he kind of had a rough ending there when the injury happened. So if we can get Tillman back and healthy and what he's been in the past, Kevin Gausman figures it out, Dylan Bundy keeps doing what he's doing, and Miley and Jimenez give them respectable outings, this rotation could be a lot better than what we anticipated before the season started.
Yeah, it could. Like you said, a lot of stuff needs to happen in the long run, but so far, there's really nothing besides Gausman to be upset about. And I think maybe in the grand scheme of things at the end of the season, this could be similar to the 2014 rotation that really just going into the season wasn't that great on paper. A bunch of 3 and 4 guys, and they got the job done. So they've done it in the past. We'll see if they can keep it up for the rest of the year.
No, I'm curious, with you being in Shippensburg, how much have you gotten a chance to watch any, do you get Masson over where you are?
Yes, we do. We get both Masson and Masson too. So. Okay,
so you've been able to watch. I don't get Masson where I'm at. And in the past, I have done the MLB TV subscription where it's like $25 a month, and I've followed the Orioles as much as I can that way. But just with the amount of I would only be able to watch them 2 or 3 times a week, and just at that price just wasn't worth it to me. So I haven't gotten the subscription for this year, and I figured I'll be back home in 3 weeks, and I'll be definitely following them more closely and watching more games when I'm there. But I haven't gotten a chance to watch much of players like Craig Gentry. Certainly, I get all the video highlights. I see what stuff happens after the game's over, and I get all the score updates and whatnot. But I haven't seen a lot of guys like Seth Smith, guys like Craig Gentry, and guys like Trey Mancini who are coming in here. Smith looks like he might be on the DL with his hamstring issue. Craig Gentry, I feel like has been their only option for a leadoff hitter. I think he, from what I've understand, he's been kind of disappointing. Not really what they're looking for, but a guy like Trey Mancini is coming up here and playing the outfield and being the DH, not a role he's used to. The prototypical infielder, but obviously they have Chris Davis over at first. But he's come in here and he leads the team right now with 5 home runs and batting .286 right now. Certainly, been interesting to see his development and what they're going to, be able to do with him because, like we alluded to, Davis has the job locked up at first base. Trumbo's usually, he's been playing a lot of, right field right now because Rickard's on the DL and Smith looks like he's heading that way too. So, yeah, he's gotten the chance to be the DH some days and been a chance to play the outfield a little bit. So, not the defender that they would want, ideally out there, kind of like a Trumbo type situation, but he's really shown the ability to hit the ball out of the ballpark, leading the team in home runs. I don't think anyone saw that coming. So Mancini's development certainly been good to see. But is there anything else with particular in the DH or outfielder situation that anything you've taken away so far?
I would just kind of echo what you said. I definitely think they need to do everything they can to get Mancini as many at-bats in the near future. He's hot right now. Let him produce for you right now. If that's going to be a season-long thing, even better. But for the, near future, I think you really got to get him as many at-bats as you can. For Seth Smith, it's an unfortunate situation with him being injured because I thought he had a great start to the season and was, for the short amount of time, pretty good solution to the outfielding issues. And Gentry, he's fast. He's a good pinch runner, but he has not been hitting so far in the regular season. So if he can fix that, he can get more at-bats. But for now, I'd kind of just like to see him used as a pinch runner and Mancini given more at-bats.
Yeah, how about Machado's slow start to the season, hitting 203 right now? Kind of looks like he's struggling at the plate a little bit. He's in the past gotten off to really fast starts. I think the only exception being, in 2014 when he came back from his leg injury. Certainly a little bit disappointing there. And then, we've seen a little bit of defensive blunders a little bit, particularly with Scope and Hardy. And I guess, with Hardy, it's a little bit more understandable considering his age. But is that a fact that the Orioles defense is not what it was at this point last year, or they haven't been as flashy so far? Is the defensive department of concern right now for the ball club?
I'd say no. I don't think it's any major concern. From what I've seen, there's been already just a surplus of flashy plays, if you ask me. I know on opening day, Manny had, or in that opening series, Manny had a handful himself of amazing plays. So, there's going to be errors. You can't maintain that level of, I don't know if perfection is the right word, but when you're not making any errors, I think that's an appropriate word. It's hard to keep that up. So they're going to make mistakes every once in a while. I don't think it's a big concern. I don't think it's impacted the result of the game yet. So if that starts happening, then I think you can have a case for it being a problem. But they'll figure it out. And Manny at the plate, I know in his post-game comments today, obviously he was getting asked about the whole hit-by-pitch situation, but he was very quick to say that he needs to get the bat going himself. So he knows it, and I think it'll just take one series for him to really get going.
Yeah, I think a lot, a thing with Manny is a lot of people, claim that, he's a hothead, he's immature, blah, blah, blah. We got to remember, when he came into the league, it's going to be 5 years ago in August now, he was only 19 years old. And when you're that age and you get into the major leagues, you're going to have a really massive ego and a really out there personality that might not always come across as, good or whatever. But I think, going back to what we were saying earlier about his, demeanor today after what happened, I think it's just more of getting experience at the major league level and maturity. And I think if we keep seeing that, it might just not just be, he's completely changed, blah, blah, blah. He had a epiphany or whatever. I think it might just be, him getting older, becoming a veteran, and just maturing, being a 24, 25-year-old guy who's been in the major leagues for 5 years now.
Yeah, I think today could be a turning point in his career in that respect. Like you said, just the way he handles adversity, because he's been no stranger to it. The only incident in my mind where he was 100% at fault is obviously the Donaldson incident. We're not going to forget that. But, I was thinking back after today's incident to, I believe it was 2 years back, series against the Nationals, and Papelbon threw a couple, not just one, a couple up and in at his head, and the final one caught his upper shoulder. And Manny was really livid after that. And it was just kind of surprised me today for him to take one that close to his head and not have, that heated of a reaction. I don't know if that's something he, thought about himself, or if it's more veteran players like Hardy or Davis and Jones kind of like sitting him down and saying, hey, it's coming. Just take your base. If you get hit, there's no sense in fighting over it. So whatever it is, it was definitely good to see.
One last topic on the Orioles before we look at their schedule here. Again, Nolan McGraw from Charm City Birdwatch joining me. Nolan_MCG on Twitter. I myself, Jay McDonnell 95, and of course Charm City BW on Twitter for all things related to our website. One more thing, we have to talk about Wellington Castillo, of course, because he is taking the place of Matt Wieters. Certainly I think he's one of the top hitters on the club in terms of average right now. He's certainly been everything the Orioles expected. Of course, the pass balls. I know it's nothing you want to see, but all things considered, for everything that the Orioles expected him to be, I think he's been that and more, and not too far. If there is any drop off between him and Wieters, it's certainly not much.
No, and it's certainly so far not in the offensive department. Wellington's been great so far. I haven't seen anything that I haven't liked from him, and I think he's going to be able to keep it up. Maybe not, being that good of a hitter, but I think he's going to be a very productive player, and he's been a very good replacement for Wieters. And just on a funny note, I don't know, I was listening to one of the radio broadcasts of a game the other night, and, coming in and out of commercial breaks, they have little sound bites from players. You're listening to WBAL radio, home of the Orioles or whatever, and they were still using one from Matt Wieters.
Oh, really?
And it made me laugh. It was just like, hi, this is Matt Wieters. You're listening to WBAL. And I was like, you guys want to replace that? But, yeah, it was a little interesting.
The Orioles right now 12-5, one of the best records in the major leagues. They are 1.5 games above the Yankees right now, and the Orioles actually are going to take a trip to New York in the coming days here. They face the Rays for a 3-game set here at Camden Yards Monday through Wednesday. Off day on Thursday before a weekend series starting on Friday at the Yankees, and then a 4-game series beginning on Monday next week at the Red Sox, which we talked about earlier. So some key divisional games coming up in a couple over the next stretch for the Orioles, and now we're going to turn our attention to the Ravens, who are going to be drafting on Thursday, which we're going to have some coverage on that. But this past week, the schedule came out, so Nolan kind of put a piece up there. I want you to kind of just go over what you were saying earlier. I don't know if you had the schedule in front of you, but you put up some points up there. I think the big ones were starting the season at Cincinnati instead of finishing it there, and then coming home for Week 17 and ending the season against the Bengals. Finally getting a Monday Night Football game at home. Tough opponents with the Packers and the Raiders and the Steelers. The trip to London. So I think compared to past schedules, this semester doesn't seem too daunting for the Ravens, but always is interesting to see who they're going to be playing and when, and we finally found that out on Thursday night.
So looking at the Ravens schedule, I like the first half. Alternates back and forth between away games and home games, so I think that's a good balance. Second half is definitely harder than the first half, but if they can pick up a good amount of wins before the bye, I think they'll be in good shape. So overall, I'm looking at either 9-7 finish or maybe even a 10-6 finish, and hopefully a playoff run with that.
Well, I like the optimism there because I picked them to finish 8-8 again, but I think what that'll come all down to is how they draft on Thursday. I like the fact that they don't finish the season in Cincinnati again. I think it'll be interesting. They'll get to play in London, which we've never seen before. They'll get to play at the new Vikings Stadium, which will certainly be cool, and they also have a trip to Green Bay coming up, so all that's going to be pretty exciting. So looking, one more thing before we send you off here on the draft coming up Thursday. Is there a particular position you are looking them to go for in the first round? You don't have to name any specific players, but if there was one position on the team, or I guess I'll just ask you, what's one thing you hope happens on Thursday in regards to where they draft?
I don't follow much of the mock draft talk. It kind of annoys me, if I'm being honest. But my top two, I think, needs would be wide receiver. If you want to try again for a first rounder, wide receiver, and hope you actually get somebody, a true first rounder, that'd be great. But other than that, I think a more sound pick, if you want to get another offensive lineman and really try to stabilize the offensive line, I wouldn't have a problem with that either.
Yeah, I could see both those being possibilities. I could also see pass rusher being what they do in the first round. And if I could pick between all three of them, I think that's what we might see, just because of the fact that they've drafted offensive lineman and receiver in the first round the past 2 years. But I don't think they're going to draft a cornerback in the first round because, from what I'm hearing, this draft is deep with corners, so maybe they could worry about that later in the draft. But if you're going to give me the top four needs, certainly pass rusher, offensive lineman, receiver, and cornerback. So would you agree with that, or is there anything else you think they should keep on the lookout for, aside from like center, which is also offensive lineman?
Yeah, I think pass rusher would be right behind receiver and offensive line for me. So that's another one. I wouldn't be mad if they drafted a pass rusher either.
Well, we'll have to see what happens. The NFL draft takes place on Thursday night from Philadelphia. First time it's ever been held there, so it'll certainly be exciting to see what players come up and which ones specifically are going to the Ravens. So we'll see what happens there. Best time of the year with college football, the players coming up via the NFL draft. So be on the lookout for draft coverage on Charm City Birdwatch, as well as some Ravens coverage and also Orioles coverage. And once the semester ends, we'll get our Orioles coverage more ramped up on the site. For all things, again, for Charm City Birdwatch, be sure to follow us on Twitter at CharmCityBW and Facebook.com/CharmCityBirdwatch. I'm Jake McDonnell, again on Twitter at JMcDonnell95, and our guest Nolan today, who is a contributor, writer, Charm City Birdwatch. You can find him out on Twitter at Nolan_MCG. So Nolan, I will talk to you later. It was good to talk to you again tonight and get some Orioles talk, especially after the first 3 weeks of the season, and to also dissect the Ravens schedule and predict the draft as well. So thanks for coming on, and we'll have to keep in touch closely this week with the NFL draft taking place.
Yep, thanks for having me. It was a good time.